You couldn't find anybody. Yeah.
Well, I know if you go to the web to look at faculty, they don't have an American.
Or they may come in late that way too. So I am so thrilled for the first time to have our annual meeting with the provost. She meets usually once a year with all of the academic units and realized she needed to include us. So here we are. So she's gonna, I assume, give us some updates on what's going on within the university. And I sent her a couple of questions, but we can ask, everybody can jump in and ask your own questions as we go forward. Just, you know, it might be about the Emeritus College, it might be about the university in general, of which I'm sure there's plenty of news. Lots going on in our world. So I'm going to turn it over to Provost Jenny Lundgren, and we've got one more person.
Okay, well, hello everyone, and hello to those of you who are on Zoom. I know you can't see me, but I'm going to stay here, so I'm recorded there. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for inviting me over. As Bonnie shared, actually the Chancellor and I go around to all the academic units once a year, and so next year I will encourage all of us to include him in this conversation as well. I think he would enjoy meeting with everyone. So I'll just give you some university updates. I will try not to talk on and on and on and on. You see, I miss teaching, and so when I get to be up by a podium, I sometimes can't control myself. So you just let me know if I need to cut it off and open it up for Q&A. So I'll start with just some big news and priorities for this year. Okay. So I think everyone's heard that we just became a Carnegie R1 institution. That is something that happened much sooner than we thought that it would. I'll just share among this group, but I'm sure that there are mixed opinions about it here, just as there are everywhere. You know, that is something that we did not necessarily go out and seek. It was bestowed upon us as they redo their classification every 5 years. It just so happened that Carnegie merged with ACE, American Council on Education, and they redid their criteria. And so they became a lot more transparent. It used to be that you had, for those of you who maybe used to teach statistics or use it, they did a cluster analysis. So they would throw in a bunch of variables, they would see who clustered, and then if you clustered up here they would say you are R1, down here you're R2, and then all the way through. They made it very straightforward. If you have more than 50 million a year in expenditures, and that's a combination of external funds, institutional funds, even counting the salaries of faculty, the portion of their research time. And if you have 95 or more research doctoral degrees, and so that's PhDs, that was DNPs, but we just moved them over to professionals, so they won't count in the future, but we'll still be fine. DMAs and EDDs, so the MD, PharmD, DDS, and JD don't count in those numbers. But that's how we became R1, and so yes.
So I was spending the last few years before I retired dealing with the interdisciplinary PhD program because of the classifications.
Yes.
It looked like we had 0 PhD graduates.
In STEM, yeah.
Is this new, well, just in general.
They counted some. They counted psychology, but yes.
But, so this new arrangement, are they counting this without having that little designation now?
Exactly, they are, yeah.
No, that's too bad that we went through all that too.
It is and it isn't. So that's another one of those things where depending on who you talk to, they are incredibly glad that now we have more disciplinary and interdisciplinary PhDs, and then others who really liked the iPhD and the flexibility that it gave. But I think the important thing that came from that is we got over that lore with UM system that we couldn't propose PhDs. And we were able to propose PhDs, S&T proposed new PhDs, and so at this point, if we have the money to afford doctoral education, because it's very expensive, most of the tuition, of course, is waived for the students and they need stipends, but when we have that opportunity, we will be able to move forward and offer some more disciplinary specific PhDs in the future. So that's what's happening on the R1 front. Bonnie?
So just relating to the R1 status, is there any thinking about emeriti faculty and all of that? Do they count like faculty who continue with research or might still have grants? I mean, how does
Yes,
that all work?
if the grants are running through the university, then that counts. But if anything is running outside of the university, then it wouldn't count. And I know some people are still mentoring doctoral students, so of course that all contributes. But really, it used to be they looked at number of research staff, number of instructional staff, postdocs. They've taken all of that away, and it's just dollars and doctorates. And we are one of 6%. I honestly thought there would be a lot more universities across the country that moved into that category. And there were some, but really it's still a pretty small number. So, yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens with one of the questions for me was the national landscape. And I'm sure that you are reading the news, but I don't know how much you're aware that, across the board. So it's STEM, it's humanities, health and human services, those agencies, the grant programs are being reduced, the staff are being reduced. And so that will have an impact on everyone across the country. Moon Choi was here 2 weeks ago, and he was at Faculty Senate and shared some data on the number of just NIH and NSF awards nationally, not just from our institutions, but the number that have been awarded at this point in time compared to the past 5 years, and it's only about 25% that have even been awarded. So that's how it says nothing about applications that are going in, but just awards. The FNA continues to be a mystery to everyone. So NIH and Department of Energy came out and said FNA is 15%. It was around 56% for most of the federal agencies. You can negotiate a little bit more for things like DoD. But 15%, I mean, that's a huge reduction. And that's, we have had a somewhat unique structure here compared to a lot of institutions for many years. 50% of FNA went to central administration and 50% went back to units. And in some units, a lot of that went back to PIs, and other units, the deans held on to it more and used it for startups, those types of things. But, if that goes down to 15%, we can't even pay the research infrastructure because that traditional 50% covered ORS, it covered environmental health and safety. We subsidize lab animal research center, there's just a lot that research is expensive.
Yeah.
And so right now, NIH, the other agencies are accepting applications at the previous rate, so they have not declined applications if they're not at 15%. So we're telling people, put the full rate. In part because if we don't do that, then they will come back and say, well, you didn't need it. It will probably be renegotiated, and not through individual institutions, but through organizations, AAUP, APLU. They're joining forces to negotiate with the administration. So we don't know what that will look like as we move into next fiscal year. But right now we're also getting reimbursed at the full rate, which is great. Our estimate was if just NIH, if they went down to 15%, we would be in a deficit of 1.5 million compared to what we should have brought in. If for just NIH, a full year impact would be closer to 3 million, and if they extended it to all of the other agencies, we were looking at closer to 8 to 10 million. A place like MU, you're talking close to 40 million, right? I heard that WashU was closer to 200 million, so significant impact for all of the universities. So how that will impact the Carnegie classification in the future, we don't know. We don't know. So that's research. I'll share a little bit more about students. I'll also share just a little bit about capital projects, and then we can open it up, and then I'm happy to answer the questions that you submitted. This year, I would say the number one priority for students has been to increase our freshman retention rate. So nationally, when the term retention is used, the definition of that is first-time college students, their freshman year coming back their sophomore year. We, of course, want them to come back every year and graduate. But when people say retention nationally, that's how they operationalize that term. And so our freshman retention rate at the highest we had was 77%, and that was not this fall, but the fall before. We dipped back down to 75% this year. Our operational peers are in the 77, 78% range. Our aspirational peers are in the 81, 82% range. And that's for urban universities situated like us, not, you know, big flagships that have different student body. So our goal would be in the next couple of years to at least hit an 80% rate. And we are doing many, many things to make that happen. So one, we do a lot of assessment of why our students leave after the freshman year. We do a lot of that assessment internally. We also partnered with Georgia State University has been really a leader in this space, and they have a lot of similarities to our institution, and we had their National Institute for Student Success visit us last summer. They did an analysis of our policies, our practices, our structures, and gave us they call it a playbook, and I would think of it almost like a cookbook for these are the specific things that you're not doing that you need to be doing, or that you need to change. And so, you know, we're hopeful that if we can implement some of those things, we'll be able to push that retention rate. And it's things such as redesigning our student onboarding experiences. So we have pockets of wonderful student onboarding. We have biology boot camp. We've got honors students. We've got first gen RU. We've got career escalators, block scholars. So we've got pockets of students that are getting a lot of individual support, mentorship from other students, mentorship from faculty, full-time staff support, a point of contact for the first time they get a failing grade on a test, and referrals to academic support and mentoring, financial wellness, the counseling center. But we have a lot of students that, for a variety of reasons, are not participating in those programs. And so we are redesigning a freshman orientation that will start the week before classes. So a lot of universities do a freshman week. We got money from the Block Family Foundation to do a shortened version of that. It'll start Wednesday, the week before classes start. It'll be partly fun, but it will also be things like in each of their academic units having an example class for the first time with a college professor so that they know what to expect. And that leads into some of your questions and comments about this generation, because they need a lot more preparation than just that. I say that having a 15-year-old, and I see what's happening in high school right now, and it scares me, it really does. But that onboarding experience, redesigning the freshman first semester experience for freshmen, FSE, we have had so much feedback from students that class is overwhelming. There were 75 assignments by the time you did a quiz and you did all your stuff, 75 assignments. Well-intentioned, but when you're designing, I'm sure some of you have had experiences with this, when you design a course by large committee, it can get very overwhelming. And so that's what happened. And so that course got a little bit out of control. So we are scaling it back. We're trying to just stick with those things that we think will be most important for freshmen. So here are your academic support resources. Here's career services. Here's how you start thinking about linking your major to internships and shadowing and the career path that you want, which is, again, linking it to their high school experiences. Most high schools, especially, in this region, but nationally, have moved to a model where starting your freshman year, you are broadly career tracked. You still have your basics, but like my son is in the business track. He had to pick one of 4. And so they're starting, real world learning. And that's a huge initiative in this community and other communities to try to get students internship experiences and start thinking about their careers. There are pros and cons to that. As a parent, there are pros and cons to that. But the students come here expecting that. I think some of the other things that, and this didn't come so much from the NIST recommendations. They had lots of additional recommendations about taking a look at our DFW rates. That's something we've talked about for many, many, many years. And sometimes we've had big initiatives. I think probably 10, 15 years ago, we did big flipped classroom for biology and math, trying to impact DFW rates. We're struggling with that still. And as a matter of fact, the first semester experience class on average over the past 3 years had a 50% D, F, or W rate, which is not acceptable for a freshman experience course. So it's gotten better. This past fall it was 20%, but those are some of the barriers that we've been inadvertently putting in place. So the orientation experience, big initiative to get faculty to proactively engage in referrals for students. So we have a flagging system where we are incentivizing. I do drawings. I give away free parking. I give away development funds for everyone teaching undergraduate courses if they will, for all their students 3 times a semester, just do a check-in. And that check-in is, are they doing great? Are they doing okay? Or do they need support? And if they need support, either the faculty member can offer that, or if it's, a student said, I can't pay my bills, I'm struggling, we get them to financial wellness, we get them to the financial aid and scholarships office. If it's mental health, we get them to counseling, academic support and mentoring. So just trying to get students to the resources they need. On the graduation side, our 6-year, so again, universities, flagships, really elite privates look at 4-year graduation rates. Most of us look at 6-year graduation rates. And so when we say graduation rate, we're talking about 6-year. We are at only 55% right now. And by the way, our campus is the lowest in retention and graduation of all of the UM system schools. So there's work to do. There's a lot of work to do. We are, again, part of that is keeping students and helping them succeed academically all along and financially, and with all these other life barriers that come up. And many of our students work full-time, multiple jobs. They have a lot of demands. They're caretaking. But we also are trying to at least financially support those who are very close to graduation, but we know they don't have enough money to finish, and we don't want them to stop out and then try to get them back. So we have a pilot grant program. We identified the students. We looked at who was close to graduating this year. We looked at their financial aid package that they'd historically had, and we told them, we're giving you this amount of money. You don't ever have to pay it back. It's a grant. Let's keep you enrolled and help you finish. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do. We've got a group of faculty that are part of, it's a student experience program through the APLU, and it's focused on designing courses for this generation of college students, and in a way that is, again, supportive and meeting our students where they need to be met, but also having high standards and holding them accountable, because when they finish here, they'll go into the workforce and the rules are very different there than they are up until that point. So again, a lot of focus on students. On the graduate side, we have rehired a full-time dean of the School of Graduate Studies, Christine Getz. She started over the summer. So there have only been a couple of times in history, and I'm looking at Peggy, that there have been a full-time dean of the School of Graduate Studies. It's oftentimes been a job that's been combined with other roles. So I'm excited we were able to get a full-time person in there. We are very much focused on improving experiences for graduate students, right? So they don't oftentimes get a lot of onboarding unless they happen to come from a program that really does good orientation. A lot of professional development. We've had a great Preparing Future Faculty program, but we know that the fields are changing and academic positions are changing, and so we're trying to expand out opportunities for them outside of higher education. So nonprofits, government, industry. We are finally putting some money into recruitment and admissions for graduates. So we've partnered with EAB. They are helping us with our marketing. They're helping us with our communication. And I know that I'm speaking with a group who have lived this, but you know, it is not uncommon for a student to reach out to a graduate program or click a request here for more information. And because we've been so decentralized with our graduate education, the email would go to someone who was no longer here, or it would just go to someone who never answered it. And so we were losing out on a lot of applicants because we were, you know, it's competitive. It's a competitive landscape, even for PhD students. And so we've really had to shift our focus from just, they will come to us, to we've got to reach out. And, you know, especially our master's programs, our ability to invest in the university really relies on tuition dollars. So anyone want to take a guess what % the state funds us of our total budget?
30%.
Very close, 25, yeah.
I know we had the joke that we were a state university and then we're a state
Yeah.
supported university and now we're a state acknowledged university.
Well, yes, so it's difficult, you know, and especially as costs go up. I will say though, we've had investments, you know, Governor Parson, every year we had investments, and I think we will get another increase this year. The challenge is the level of that increase when it's 1.5%, 2%, even 3% is just not keeping up with inflation. You know, again, utilities are going up, insurance is going up, and that's infrastructure insurance and things like what we pay for benefits and health insurance, and it goes up for the university and it goes up for individuals. So it's really hard to keep up. And so tuition dollars really are the most immediate way in which we're able to reinvest. So some of the reinvestments that we've done in the last few years, the chancellor 3 years ago in the state of the university announced that we would embark on a process of evaluating faculty salaries compared to national norms for like institutions at rank and comparing to disciplines, and try to get people up to where peers were. And so we used, Oklahoma State University has a national study that they lead of many institutions from across the country. We compared by zip code, which is just basically your discipline, and whether you were tenure track, non-tenure track, your rank. And so that's how we were comparing every individual faculty member in all the schools. And the first year we invested $750,000 into law, $500,000 into law, $250,000 into nursing, and then $250,000 into different staff titles. So staff, system does periodic market adjustments, and then all staff get moved up. You know, that doesn't happen with faculty. It just doesn't. And so that's why there was more invested on the faculty side. So law and nursing, and then the second year, School of Science and Engineering, they got all of the adjustments, and so they got all $750,000, and then $250,000 to staff. And then this past year, it was a split, $500,000 to humanities and social sciences, $250,000 to education, social work, and psychological sciences, and then the other $250,000 to staff. We have a couple of units that library faculty are one of them that probably are still around 10% below peers. The rest of our units are actually either slightly above or around 1% to 2% below peers. And you know, and sometimes it's shocking. Conservatory is slightly above peers. Business school is slightly above peers. You know, and that's going to shift a little bit from year to year based on the constellation of the faculty. But in general, we are a lot closer than where we were a few years ago. But as we've shared out with everyone, as we go into FY26, we do not anticipate having the funding for that, just because things are getting so much tighter. And there was a lot of investment from the state, from ARPA funds that flowed, you know, came down from the federal government. And that's all stopping. So lastly, just capital projects. Speaking of state, we got $80 million from the state to build the healthcare delivery and innovation building on the health sciences campus. So that will house, it'll be 5 floors. 4 floors will be built out. The 5th floor is being shelved right now because it's another $25 million to complete it. And the total building cost as of today is $145 million, and it goes up. The longer it takes to build it, it goes up. And so that will house brand new pre-doctoral dentistry clinics. So I don't know if anyone here was ever with the dental school, but that's their DDS training clinics. All their residency programs are staying in the existing building. Medicine will have space, biomedical engineering, Health Equities Institute, and the data science DSAC will have some space down there. And that takes up 4 floors. And then the idea with the 5th floor is that at some point it's being built with higher ceilings, and so it could be wet lab space. I think realistically we will probably have to partner with some industry partners that have some money and get them to invest in that space, and we may need to rent it out, but again, that would be a source of revenue. In this building, I think most of you are aware, we've redone the 4th floor. It will open in May, so we're trying to consolidate all of our student support spaces so that people don't have to go over to the administrative center in Atterbury. Everything that they need outside of their academic units will be on the 4th floor. So all of the academic support and mentoring, undergraduate research, our programs like Men of Character, First Gen RU, Career Escalators, everything that is a little bit more academically connected will be here. And then everything else will be over in Atterbury. So as we're going to redo the whole front side of Atterbury, I should have brought some pictures. It's going to be beautiful. The cafeteria has moved out. It will be a beautiful welcome center. The images they showed us, when you look up in the big room where we will greet students and their families, the lights will be in the shape of a kangaroo. It's really cool. So it'll be a great first impression for our prospective students. Welcome Center, RU Advising, Career Services, School of Graduate Studies, International Student Affairs Office, the barbershop will stay over there, and UMKC Central. And that's another thing that we've started and stopped over the years that some of you might be familiar with, but we've cross-trained a whole group of people. So if it's a financial aid question, a scholarship question, a registrar question, there is one team that answers all of that so that people are not pushed from office to office, and they will have space over there. So with that, I will stop, and I'm happy to answer your questions, or we can just open it up, whatever you prefer. Yeah.
We all have a fair idea, I assume, what the changes are that the Trump administration does on the university as a whole. How much of that is affecting the students,
Yeah.
especially the undergrad level?
Yeah. So I think the biggest impact has been scholarships. So I'll just back up a little bit. With the Supreme Court case, and we did not have any graduate programs or undergraduate programs where race was ever a criteria as part of admissions. Now, certainly there were efforts to have diverse student bodies and diverse university community, but there was never in any program a criteria around race or around gender. And so that was not a big transition. I think that piece, when that decision came out, it felt very big, but it didn't functionally change anything. But with that, the Attorney General for Missouri said that that includes scholarships. And then when we saw the Trump administration, they came out with a Dear Colleague letter in February. So all of their letters have come out generally on a Friday afternoon after 5. and that's when they've announced a lot of their executive orders, or in this case the Dear Colleague letter. And so I think the impact, the very tangible impact, has been that we can no longer have race-based scholarships. And so we had to work with a number of donors that had set up, scholarships for Latinx students or African American students, and or just underrepresented minority in general, and work with them to change the criteria. And so that was difficult, and I think that was painful for a lot of our students. And so in most of those cases, if not all, the scholarship still exists. It just has to be different criteria. So we've tried to follow NIH put out some great guidance about here are other ways that you can focus on first generation students, just expand how we're being inclusive that's not focused on race. And so that's what we've done for some. It's been, I think for a lot of students, they're upset. They don't quite know what it all means. I think there's also just a lot of lore. So I spend a lot of time in the student affairs, and Todd Wells, Dean of Students, spends a lot of time talking to students about, well, this is what we can do, and this is what we can't do, but there's an awful lot that we still can't do. For example, all of our student organizations have always been open to everyone. All of our student programs have always been open to everyone. And so we've just been trying to reinforce that. And so it doesn't change, it doesn't functionally change anything for them, but of course there's an emotional impact. In terms of our international student body, we, like many universities, did have some students that were impacted by I'm going to use the terminology revocation of visa. For a lot of them, it was just their case in CVIS was closed, which is slightly different. But we had students that received letters that said, you have 14 days to leave the country, and there was no clear reason why. And, we worked with each of those students, and of course, a week ago or so, that was reversed. So all of those students can stay here. But before that, we were working with them individually to do a teach-out plan. If they were planning on graduating this semester, we were going to do everything we could to get them graduated this semester. Or if they were already graduated and they were on OPT, which is for STEM students, they can work for a couple of years doing everything we could to help them through that transition. So it was good news that was reversed, but of course I don't think we don't know really, what to expect. And I think that's kind of the theme of all of this time, is that nobody really knows what to expect, and we're just trying to take everything day by day, not get caught up in the headlines, right? Because there are a lot of headlines that sensationalize what's happening, but if you really read what comes out, it's not often as bad as it might seem. So even the Dear Colleague letter, it caused a lot of chaos. They came out 2 weeks later with an FAQ document that didn't say anything that we didn't already know and we weren't already doing. And so we just, had to keep calm and focus on the mission. And so that's really what we've been trying to do with the students is, we're going to continue to support you in the way we've been supporting you. You continue to have all your clubs and organizations. They've always had to be open to everyone anyway, so nothing new has changed there, but without trying to invalidate the stress that many of our students are going through right now. So just as an example, one last example, we were meeting with pharmacy last week, and they had suggested that the counseling center might have some support groups for international students. It's a great idea, and so that's something that I passed along, and I'm telling them I'd like to have started by next week. So,
So I'm an alumnus of UCLA, and I got something about how the UC system had a number of international students who had their visas revoked or whatever, and they were going to have legal support for those students. Is the University of Missouri system doing something similarly? Does legal in Columbia assist students in these types of things?
No, and what they probably meant, and this is what we did, is we provided referrals. We provided the name of attorneys who specialize in immigration law. So I doubt that UCLA probably didn't have a huge contact of attorneys that specialize in that. So yeah, so we absolutely shared out, all 4 system schools did, the names of attorneys, mostly in Missouri, but in multiple regions, and encouraged students to work with them. I think the challenge with that is, and there were some class action lawsuits, there were some things that were happening that through the student networks they were able to take advantage of, but You know, that what we were hearing was that a lot of the attorneys, you know, they were not necessarily wanting to take all these pro bono cases, and that's really what they needed to be, and that they were focused on bigger immigration and not just individual students. So yes, we did, but you know, there were some limits to that. You want me to answer some of your questions, or are we out of time?
Well, I don't know what
No,
your
we've
time's
got,
gonna
no,
be.
I think I'm here until 3:30.
So,
Yeah.
you've already covered the R1
Yeah.
piece of it, and in large part the national scenario. We wanted to talk specifically about what we're doing with the early career faculty awards. Last year we had a record number of applications. It was
That's great.
pretty awesome. I don't know what we ended up with this year.
About half of last year, but from a completely different composition of academic units.
Yeah.
Some deans last
Yeah.
year pushed,
Yeah.
and apparently didn't push this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, we see this as probably our signature program, and just curious if you have any ways that we could increase its impact or think
Yeah.
about it. I mean, we're thinking about putting together a campaign to raise more
Yeah.
funds to fund it at a higher level, because $1,000 is pretty piddly.
Yeah. Well, I think, but it's something.
It's
It
something,
is something.
Yeah.
Still better than nothing.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. So we are in the silent phase of the capital campaign, and we will go public in October. So I think getting organized around what that campaign would look like would be helpful to be thinking about that right now. And Giving Day, if you are not participating in Giving Day, that would be another great opportunity. I think the biggest way, though, to plug in and help is probably through Cafe. We're really trying to run, and so Alexis Petrie is your primary contact there, or Alex Holsinger. There could be opportunities where people who are experienced with different, you know, grant. So I think the biggest things are a lot of the faculty who are just coming in out of graduate school, especially in disciplines where there are not postdocs to help mentor, are not experienced in seeking funding or in writing for an audience that's maybe different, or writing in a way that's slightly different. So I think if you were thinking about, you know, how could the Emeritus College do a workshop for either this grant to get out the word or to participate in some of the workshops that we're already doing, that would be a mechanism. We need, you know, and again, I don't want to speak for Alexis and say that all of these things are open, but these are what I would encourage you to explore. There's always a need for peer observers for teaching, you know, so especially it's something we're trying to have everyone do a couple of times before they go up for promotion and tenure. And in some disciplines, it's automatic. Everyone gets a couple of peer observations. In other disciplines, they don't know where to start. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, you know, if you've got a really small department and you've got someone who's doing it just to check the box, maybe it would be good to bring in someone from outside that discipline. So I think there could be opportunities to support, especially junior faculty, with teaching and also just with mentorship. So my sense is that a lot of the schools don't have a great mentorship program set up. So those would be some of the areas that if anyone had any extra time and specialization in something that they wanted to give, you know, working with Alexis, even if it's just hey, we could offer some workshops, you know, I was very successful in blah, 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 and I would love to pass this on to junior faculty. They're always looking for that.
So yeah, that's a good thing. You know, a lot of the emeritus professors would like to help. Along with that, I have two questions, maybe suggestions. One related to the like a doctoral faculty status. You know, a lot of the emeritus professors are retired, but still have some duties on PhD communities or master communities. So for PhD communities, we have doctoral faculty. Do you know any new policy or towards the emeritus professors, continuation, extension for doctoral faculty?
I feel like the graduate council has probably been discussing that. I can't remember off the top of my head if they've put forward any new policies. I think in practice in a lot of departments, it's not uncommon at all that if you retire and you've got a student that's got a couple of years left, even though you might transfer primary mentorship to someone who is currently employed, you remain on the committee and functionally are still helping out. So I think a lot of departments have handled that internally. But I would reach out to Christine Getz and see where grad council is
Yeah, I
on
got
that.
the one case
Mhm.
related to myself.
Mhm.
Recently I got a notice from School Graduate Studies, hey, your doctoral faculty is going to expire by the end of May.
Yeah.
So, but I still have a student.
Mhm.
So then I talked to all the old unit coordinators. I say, well, I have to probably to be on for the student to get some extension, you know. I get a 1 year extended. So then I saw the email communications by School Graduate Studies. They suggested emeritus professors, if they want to continue something with doctor committees, they should reapply doctor faculty status, which is kind of new to me, because those discipline-based criteria were designed for active faculty,
Mhm.
how many papers you pass, what grants, not apply to emeritus.
Yeah.
I would say probably easy way to just get some kind of extension.
Well, or even there could be a creation of a new category while people are
Right,
helping
right,
mentor students to completion.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other thing related is that some faculty mentioned for the School of Science and Engineering, they removed almost all the emeritus professors from the website. You couldn't find anybody. Yeah.
Well, I know if you go to the website, there's no, to look at faculty, they don't have an emeritus faculty
No,
listing anywhere.
Not a list on the discipline, but used to be, check the most schools at UMKC or most universities in the US, when you retire, they try to still keep your name or list it separately at the bottom. So which they keep the institution knowledge, and a lot of the students or even graduates, they come back to the school, or new students contact school based on those names regarding donation, for example.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember you. So so then do something, you know, what years, but I don't know why. With
Well,
that
I
school-
think what happened, and I don't know for sure, but so we tried to clean up all of the websites and make them look the same and put them on the same platform. There's a parallel cybersecurity process that's happening behind this, because we put ourselves at risk by not having things standardized. So we have tried to every year update the marketing and communications web team with here are the current faculty. And so my guess is it was just part of here's a list of the current employee faculty, and people didn't think about, oh, and we used to include the emeritus faculty. And I can talk to the web team about for each school, how do we do that in a way that doesn't appear piecemeal? You know, is there under faculty another list of emeritus faculty for each school? Or do we do it at a department level? Yeah.
We have the database of the Emeriti, and
Yeah.
so I could yearly, when
Mm-hmm.
faculty
Yeah.
are putting in the list of
Yeah.
current
Yeah.
Emeriti faculty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we even know native departments
Yeah.
relative to the old configurations and the current
Yeah.
configuration.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll pass that suggestion along.
probably it's unique for the new school, school science,
Well,
engineering.
maybe, but we've redone all of them. Again, because we had faculty that resigned or retired and weren't emeritus, so we had a lot, and then we didn't put new people on. And especially during leadership transition and COVID, things got messy. And so when we all came back, we were really trying to clean things up and frankly, professionalize. When you look at other university websites, that tells you a lot about do they have their stuff together or not. And so I think that some of it was just trying to clean that up and it got taken off. But that's a good idea. Thank you.
So I'm going to lead us into our last.
Yeah.
Oh, Sully's got a question. Let's let him.
Sully, just
unmute yourself.
Okay, hi. I would just say that I think the point which you were just talking about is very, very important, because when people are trying to find out what sort of research has gone on at UMKC or in certain schools inside of UMKC, it really helps them if they can see that someone who is recently retired, who has been very productive in a particular area, is still affiliated, is still an emeritus faculty. So that I think if we don't have a way to see the emeritus faculty on the university website, the university is selling itself short by quite a bit. That you're trying to put the best face on for people outside to list all of the productivity which has gone on at the university. So I think it's really important for them to alter the online presence of the various schools and the university in order to include emeritus faculty. And I don't think it would be that hard to do, because many, 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 many universities do that.
Yep. Thank you very much.
And I, weirdly to say, I'm going to agree with Sully. Sully, I agree with you. In the School of Nursing, I can tell you that if I was in Facet with the Emeriti College being next door, I would not have known it existed. And we have had faculty retire that didn't, I mean, that kind of made Kit and kind of made what we're doing. We've had faculty retire that didn't know what it was and didn't, it was like, get me out of here. And I think we've all kind of agreed that that first year of retirement, we kind of go through but if it's listed there, oh, okay, that's what it means. That's what, at least it'll bring it to the forefront of people knowing that it exists. So when they are going to make that desire to retire, yeah, they'll still be acknowledged. It won't be kind of off into some dream space.
Yeah, and I also, and again, and I will share all of this back, and I think that it's something that we can do fairly easily by the fall when we're updating. But I do want everyone to keep in mind, the function of university websites has really shifted over the last 15, 20 years. And I even remember, the function when I first got here was to communicate with one another. We had all these internal documents, and that's how we communicated. It is really a recruitment tool and an external facing tool. And so everything that we have on the website, and the hours and hours and hours, because we have hundreds and thousands of web pages, hundreds and thousands. And a lot of them are things that people like us put up at some time and never took down. And so it's a team of people trying to always clean that up. But we're focused on prospective students, right? And so who are they looking for? So I think that there's absolutely a place for that, and then we'll have to do it in a way that, a prospective PhD student then doesn't start sending you an application saying, are you accepting anyone?
I think a PhD student, may have read some of my stuff, may be able to say, oh, I'd like to be on my committee, and somebody at the School of Nursing would say, oh, that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
And if you just don't know it, you don't know it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I've never been on
echoing what the gentleman over there said, it's a good way, there's a scholarship in my name that's got a lot of money.
Yeah.
or I've been told. And if they don't know I'm still around, or if they can't do it, that scholarship may not be getting money. And I can remember 3 or 4 years ago, I was still getting money from former students. And so I would hate to see that disappear, because it helps.
Yeah, everyone.
You're talking about scholarships and keeping students, and I think that that's a big deal. I mean, in my department, my scholarship helps 2 or 3 people. So I think it's a really good way to echo what he said, get donations.
Thank you.
What is the status of the expansion of the Performing Arts Center?
Yay! Come to Crescendo tonight and you will hear the big news. So we are going public tonight with the campaign for that. So we have been working for about a year with a design team, and they are in the detailed, so there'll be a phase 1 and a phase 2. And phase 1, and so again, limited resources. This isn't going to be a brand new space, but this is going to be additions and renovations, if I've got my directions, to the Performing Arts Center. So the first phase would extend out to the east and the south, and to the south toward us. The dance spaces, so accreditation has been an issue, and I mean, we've not lost accreditation, but it's a concern in the conservatory because of the physical space, and it has come up with theater, music, and with dance. And so a couple of years ago, we did some immediate renovations for the music accrediting body, safety related to sound. The decibels in some of the practice rooms were way beyond what they needed to be, and if you're the faculty member teaching in that space, class after class after class, that's a problem. So we re-soundproofed things, we redid practice spaces. This renovation would add practice spaces for the dance. Right now there are spaces where they cannot do lifts because they will hit their head on the ceiling. And there's also pieces of it for music performance and practice space, and then a black box theater. And then the second phase of the renovation would be to redo White Recital Hall, and the images that I've seen are really beautiful, and then move some offices over there. And then in conjunction with that, there would be some movement back and forth between Performing Arts and Grant, just to fit everything in. We have some significant financial commitments at this point, but we have a long way to go. And so that's where tonight there will be at Crescendo, for those of you who go, we moved this year to the Nelson for the big Crescendo, but everybody still wanted the traditional performance. I call it the collage performance. I'm sure there's a different name for it at Kaufman. And so the spring recital, we are doing that, and so that is happening at Kaufman tonight. So there will be a big video, and it will introduce and have images of what it will look like, and be the public launch of the campaign. So you get a sneak peek of that. Yeah. So yeah, it's exciting. So.
Well, maybe Felicia knows this, but how is the what's going on with Missouri Rep impact everything? The fact that they are disassociating themselves, right?
Well, I would describe it as a mutually beneficial transition. So we have worked with them. So over the years, we have gone from investing $1 million in cash every year to the rep down to just in-kind space. And that's been critical because we've been able to reinvest those dollars, you know, into the conservatory, into the university. We love having the rep there, and everyone loves the Christmas Carol, and we and there's such a historic relationship. But the reality is also that there's constant space challenge. It's a constant negotiation. So, you know, rep doesn't do performances in the summer. We don't do performances in the summer. We're always using that space at the same time. And so anytime someone says, well, just shift it by a week or shift it by a week, then it's hard for both organizations. It's hard for us to move our recital times, and it's not just theater. Dance uses that space probably more than theater does, which is why we actually want the black box for the types of performances that they want to do here on campus. And so, we've spent years and years, many provosts before me, many deans before Courtney, working on this relationship. And I think we finally got to a really good place where we see a path forward that will give us the space that we need and preserve our resources, and they will have space they need and preserve their resources, but we will still have opportunities for collaboration. Our students being in their performances, that
My
type of
sense
thing.
is that they're gonna find a new space.
I think that would be their
My
goal.
understanding was the Covacans wanted this.
Um,
The money people.
I think that there will have to probably be quite a few people that come together. I don't know the details, and I don't know that they're far enough along to know where they will be, and I'm sure a lot of people will have to fund it. I just know that in terms of when our 10-year agreement ends, which I think is 2028, it's coming up, that at that point, we are finally at a place where both parties are feeling really good about, in order for them to grow, this is the right path for them. In order for us to grow, this is the right path for us.
Similarly, I know KCUR is going to become their own entity.
Yeah.
Are they going to stay where they are?
Well, they weren't going to stay where they were to begin with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so KCUR has also been working on their own campaign for new physical space, and they again have some donor support already. I don't know exactly how much they've raised at this point, but so for us and for UMSL, and I don't know the details of the process, but essentially it's selling our license or transferring our license to a 501c3 that will be created, and that will give them the ability to move forward in a way that is best for them. I know that there were members of the community that were very excited about this, and are likely the same community members that have been supporting their new space. Now, where that will be, I don't know. I think we would love to see them still be adjacent or even on campus. But that will, over the next couple of years as they transition, I'm sure they'll have to, again, think about what's best for them.
Because we do have a relationship student-wise with KCUR.
Yes, and I think we would absolutely continue that, and we do that with other entities. We have lots of unique relationships, toy and miniature, we do. We have a lot, all of everything that's happening over in Epperson, we have a lot of unique relationships with other organizations, and I think one of the things I will speak for the chancellor when I say this. I don't know that this has always been the case, although I hope that it would be, but every time we're thinking about a partnership or decisions like this, we are putting at the forefront, well, what's the benefit to UMKC? What's the benefit to the students? So even, for example, with Epperson House, again, that's probably a $25 to $30 million renovation if we were to do it, which is just wild. But it's when a university does it, and all of the rules that are special to a university, the cost goes up 20 to 30%. All of the fire suppression and ADA compliance that are required of us that aren't necessarily to the same level required of a private business also increase costs. So we were able to partner with a long-term land lease, get another organization to put all of their money into the renovations, but they are very excited, for example, that when it opens, they would love to see conservatory students go do performances and have a lot of faculty and staff that are over, using that space in different ways. So if we kept it, it was going to sit there and rot. It just would, because no donor is going to give us $25 million to do that. But somebody, a company, somebody private who's going to invest in it, they did have the resources to do that.
So in other words, it's gonna be a boutique,
There,
but they will give space to us too.
so it will be a boutique spa and not just like a massage place, but like a thermal spa. And if you've ever toured, I mean, they're taking the pool, they're restoring the pool that's in the basement underground. There is this really creepy room that doesn't even have floors, that's going to be a salt room. I mean, it's going to be this fascinating spa, boutique hotel, coffee bar, restaurant, cocktail lounge. And so there will be space where faculty, staff can hold events. Now, not necessarily huge space, again, because if you've been in there, it's not, you're not going to put 100 people in there, but if you're going to do a small little meeting. But again, certainly opportunities for internships for our students. We don't have a hotel and restaurant management program. If we did, it would be awesome, but there will be other opportunities. Yeah, so that's one I'm excited about. I think that there was no other way to get that done, and I'm glad that somebody was excited to invest in it.
Well, as a member of the Historic Kansas City Foundation, I'm a very loud member. I'm hopeful that the historical aspect of it will be
It will.
saved, because that's a very,
Yeah.
one of the most important buildings
Yeah.
in the city.
Yeah.
Because the one over by the Art Institute that we saved is, in 3 years, gonna be destroyed by the two brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen some just high level renderings, and I think that is their plan, is to keep as much of everything original as they could. And I would just, again, you've probably been in this building, I'm sure others have, there were 2 steps here, 2 steps there, 2 steps there. If we would have renovated it, that all would have had to have changed. Again, maybe not at the time that AUPD was occupying it, but now it all would have had to have changed. And so I think that they will do a good job, but
Well, I'm
you
just
can go
glad
check it
that
out.
I'm just glad something's being done,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
the
yeah.
ghost that lives there is not very
I
happy.
know, definitely not.
It's gonna be kicking cars all over the
I
place
know.
like.
What else?
What's your expectation, looking 10 years forward, what the Emeritus College can be
Yeah.
for UMKC?
Well, I hope that I would like to see a little bit closer. I would like to see some opportunities with CAFE in terms of the mentoring and the faculty professional development. I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I don't know that you do either, but I think, as you recall, when you are full-time in the thick of it, you don't always have time to think about helping somebody else. But we have a lot of faculty that, we're constantly hiring right now. With the VSP program, a lot of people left. We've had multiple years of hiring new faculty. All of higher education has experienced significant turnover, like a lot of industries. It's settling down, but still, we've got a lot of new people. And so I think if there are ways to think about supporting junior faculty, if there are ways, I think that we talked about serving on committees. If you have expertise, maybe you wouldn't be the chair of the committee, but all of the departments, I think service in general, people are exhausted, and I keep telling them, we don't need 5-member dissertation committees anymore. A lot of universities have changed that, and a lot of the programs have gone down to 4 or 3. But I think, we're always, I just graduated my last doctoral student last May, and I think they barely let me count as her advisor. But, we had at least 2 people from other institutions on the committee just to find the expertise that she needed. So I think plugging back in ways that you all feel comfortable with, but I would invite a lot more of this, so that the places where you're investing your time are the places where we're needing to move the university forward. I think that will feel more satisfactory to everyone. And again, largely it's in support of junior faculty and in support of our students.
Well, I think one thing we've discovered with the ECFA applications is you kind of blow off some of the questions, or they don't know, one or the other. I mean, in this whole, well, certainly educating them on, this is kind of what you're gonna have to do to get grants or funding of any sort, so, that I think is important. But, I do think we've all seen that, the generations are behaving differently than they used to. I mean, the way
Phones have destroyed us.
They read differently. They look big views, but they don't see what you instruct them to do.
just how they communicate, how they, or don't communicate. I don't know if there's a way of all of us kind of learning from each other how to actually work across generations, because sometimes it's really hard to get through to a younger person for us, that these are important steps that you need to take, but maybe we also need to adjust our thinking about some of it.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, both, right? So I say this
You
again.
have a 15-year-old.
I have a 15-year-old
So
who
you know what's happening to
yeah.
the ability to write. And they don't understand what plagiarism is.
Well, so there are multiple things, right? So they from kindergarten on learn on an iPad, right? So my kids, I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, both of them from kindergarten on don't bring home paper. They ask for us to buy the kids pencils. They don't use them ever. They're not even sharpened. Everything is on an iPad. They don't learn how to type. They don't learn cursive. My daughter said, "Can you sign your name?" No clue. And then she laughs and says, "I'm sorry." She says, "That's not important. No one's ever going to need to know that." And she's probably right, because I think that's all changing. The way people don't even sign checks anymore. Okay, so it's all changing. But they are thinking differently. When they do their assignments, my son and daughter are voice dictating their answers. So even the way they think, the way I was putting together my 5-paragraph essay and handwriting, because I thought that I could think better when I wrote it by hand, and then, learn to type it and all that later, they're just different. And so they think differently. They also, I think some of this is a challenge of K through 12 education, and my kids are in a really strong district, in public school, but a strong district. My son doesn't have to turn anything in on time. He is given until the end of the quarter. So if he misses something, it doesn't matter. And I'll say, "What are your grades?" Because they use Canvas like we do, and he'll look them up and he'll say, "I have a C in ELA." Why? You're a smart kid. This is one of the areas where you do the best. I didn't turn in 3 assignments. Turn them in, and then by the end of the quarter he will have an A, and it's that way in every single class. I went to talk. They had a parent night, to talk about college prep. I was super excited. It's like college professor mom's gonna go start with his son as a freshman. The teachers blew it off. They looked at him and they said, "Well, you thinking about going to college?" I was like, "Of course he's thinking about going to college." and then they go, "Oh, what does your mom do? Oh, okay, you've got this figured out." And then they totally blew it off. And so, and then actually a Spanish teacher was there and he said, "Sam, you didn't do that assignment. You just want to do your presentation right now." And let him do his presentation and gave him credit for it. And so this is happening all the time. Not in all districts, right? But I think this is more the norm. And so by the time the students get to us, the idea, they don't necessarily know how to take notes because it's not necessarily something they've ever had to do. And their use of AI, and this is where we could learn from them a little bit. When I talk to my son about AI, it is a life tool. And he's thinking through when is it appropriate and when is it not appropriate, but even things like, well, I could just record the class and then ask the tool to put it into notes for me. I mean, there are things that I think the students are learning how to do in terms of helping them with note-taking and keeping track that I would have not even thought of doing. I wouldn't even know that the tools exist. So I I could go on and on about this, and I'll take my mom hat off for just a moment, but I think it's a little bit of, we have to find a way for the K through 12 preparation to make sure that they're ready when they come to us. And I do think I've heard people say this, and I thought it was just talk, and I really am seeing it. COVID delayed everything. Everyone came back exhausted. The behavior was different. I saw the behavior very different. And so we lost some ground on those expectations for how you behave and what's appropriate and what's expected. And I think that we've gone a little too far with, it's okay, get it in when you can get it in. And then that puts them behind when they're here. Yeah, and then the flip side of that, of course, is I am terrible with technology. I can't figure out how to do anything. I'm constantly asking my 10-year-old, how do I do this on my phone? And so we also have to keep up to speed, because when they come to us, we don't have a lot of credibility when we can't do the technology that they're doing, and when we are making things very difficult for them. And yeah, so those are my thoughts.
I hadn't really thought about some of what you were saying, but like, because of the industry and where I came from, deadlines. You have to have deadlines are important, and even in college are deadlines. And I've ran into some of that, students struggle with deadlines. So and you're not going to get out of college and have a career, and if you can't approach deadlines, then you're not going to have a job.
Absolutely. And their ideas about jobs are different. Everyone's an influencer. You can make money so many different ways, and there's a little bit of truth to that, but for just a small portion of the population, everyone else is going to have a job the traditional way, and they're going to have a boss, and they're going to have deadlines.
Sully has a question.
Yeah, to go back to the point that the university is now an R1 university, do you see in the future, you can't answer this now because it's new, but in the future, do you think the fact that we are an R1 university will have an effect upon the requirements for P&T? Because I think in the past, if you were to compare the requirements for P&T at an R1 university to an R2, you would often find that they aren't the same criteria.
Great question, and it's something we've been talking to the faculty about. We just went through a really intense, and I would say sort of painful, benchmarking process for all of the P&T criteria across campus. And painful only in the sense that we are a group of people that overthink everything. And so you get a group of people together and they overthink everything, and it takes 2 years, and it probably could have taken 6 weeks to say, who are your peers? And then lots of questions about, well, how will the provost and how will the chancellor, how will they be able to determine if our criteria are appropriate, because they're not in our discipline? Like, I'm not going to determine if your criteria are appropriate. I just want you to determine if they are appropriate, and tell me who you're benchmarking against. Go explore it, and if you think they're great, great. And if you think they need to change, change. And I've seen all the criteria. I've looked at them several times, and I think in many instances, we were already holding ourselves to an R1 expectation. I do think that in some disciplines, in large R1s, right? And again, so there are smaller R1s like us, and then there are big R1s like Arizona State. So as an example, I have a colleague in psychology, Arizona State. You cannot get tenure there without having a federal grant. And in psychology, it's probably going to be an NIH grant. That's just to get tenure. That's not going to be our criteria here because we don't have the infrastructure for that. So just because we are R1 doesn't mean now all of a sudden we have to benchmark against universities that are very different structurally and resource-wise from us. But there are other R1s like us that would say, but you have to be applying for grants, which are criteria that my department has always had. And I was applying for NIH grants even as a pre-tenure faculty. I wasn't successful in getting them, but we all did it. And so I think some of it will be, the people will find we don't have to shift all that much. There are some other pockets on campus though, where even compared to peers, we had lower expectations for ourselves than we probably should have in disciplines where external funding really was the norm across institutions like ours. And so we've been working toward how do we get faculty, well, some of it's culture change, right? Like, so how do we just set that expectation? And then also how do we help people? So this is where we've started a grant development program through CAFE. And again, some of this was my own just experience where it came down to time. I had ideas, but I needed a course release. And so that was one of the programs that we implemented. It's this academic year-long program. People spend a lot of time trying to think about what's my program of research going to be. And then in that second semester, they can either get some pilot funds or a course release to do that. I will also just add, because the question comes up about external reviewers. So if we are R1, does that mean our external reviewers also need to be from R1 institutions? Again, I see all of the external reviewers across all of campus. I think people would be shocked by who's already reviewing our P&T cases. It is, I would say at least half of the reviewers are from R1 institutions, if not more. They're from outstanding international institutions. I think it's one of those things where there's lots of talk, it sounds really scary, but if you look at what we're already doing, there's probably not that much that would ever shift. But what we've told everyone, and this is Campus P&T Committee and Senate endorsed a process as part of the long-standing Chancellor's Memo 35 that's been around for many, many years, that we would go through this benchmarking process every 5 years. I think that's way too ambitious. I think re-benchmarking is more of a 7 to 10 year process because it took us almost 3. Some of my SSE colleagues are in here, and SSE hasn't even finished theirs, and they started, I think this is the 3rd academic year. They're close. So I think that we're settled for now, and we'll see where we are the next time we do a benchmarking. But I think for the most part, we're not that far off.
I think we need to call us.
Okay, thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
More than you expected to invest.
That's fine.